Hello, I'm Bob Dorigo Jones. This is number 0868, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0868. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, you'll meet Karen Horwitz, who is an award-winning school teacher, whistleblower, and author of A Grave Danger, White Shock Crime. She believes that corruption in school systems is a big problem, but also incompetence.
The corruption in the schools is, 90% of the problem. But the other thing is corruption breeds incompetence. There's a lot of incompetent stuff going on. Like children were not really taught media literacy, and that's why so many people really believe all kinds of stuff that's all on the internet. And there's just so many things that got missed because the schools weren't doing their job more than 40 years now. Because this sort of started in the 80s, and it was just the beginnings of the corrupt angle. But prior to the corrupt angle, they were still making mistakes.
Former journalist Gary May is the author of the novel Unburdening. How different is it for him to go from journalism to fiction after a long career?
As a journalist, I was always kind of frustrated that I was never able to tell my story or the stories that evolved in my head. I wanted to tell people what I thought about things and my observations rather than simply writing down and being meticulous about being accurate about what other people were telling me. I started reading people like Truman Capote and Hunter S. Thompson and discovered the narrative style they applied to fiction, to real characters. They became deeper literary characters, and I tried that. I was ready. I was just ready to jump into fiction.
Dog trainer Kathleen Troy is back, and she says that for young puppies or older dogs, training really never ends.
I think a dog is always in training every day. They're always looking to you. I think with an older dog, just realize that it may take them a little bit longer, but at the core of it, all dogs want a job. And they just want to please you. So if you can put some fun into the training, if you can show them that you're enthusiastic and that you are creating this bond with your dog, it's going to be fun. They're going to want to do it. And don't forget, the secret to any dog training is yummy treats.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, dad joke theater, Sir Dudley's Poetry Corner, a morning shower thought, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest later, the person who told you this was show number 0868, was Bob Dorigo Jones, author of Remove Child Before Folding, the 101 stupidest, silliest, and wackiest warning labels ever. He was also the host of Let's Be Fair, a segment that was on this show for a decade. Thank you very much, Bob, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. You may remember a couple of months ago when McDonald's CEO Chris Kempczinski was raked over the coals for a social media post touting the McDonald's Big Arch Burger. The company has been doing damage control ever since. Well, enter Donald Gorski, who holds a world record for eating nearly 36,000 Big Macs. He says McDonald's new Big Arch Burger doesn't measure up to his longtime favorite, the 72-year-old Wisconsin man who has been eating Big Macs twice daily since May of 1972, called the Big Arch underwhelming after trying one his son brought him on March the 8th.
The Big Arch, the most McDonald's burger yet. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Not so fast, Brian Cox. Gorski said the white cheddar cheese and tangy sauce were less preferable than Big Mac's fixings, and the 2 quarter-pounder patties were too much meat for his age. I wasn't really crazy about it, he remarked, comparing it to eating steak. I just think the Big Mac is better. Gorski has held the Guinness World Record since 1999, documenting each burger with receipts and containers. His official count reached 35,000 on March 15th of last year and stood at 35,746 as of March 22nd of this year. Well, he might be the oracle on McDonald's burgers, but I'm still pulling for the quarter pounder. A UK Court of Appeal ruled it's impossible to determine which identical twin fathered a woman's baby after she had sex with both men within 4 days during the conception month. The mother and one twin challenged a family court decision that named the other brother as father on the birth certificate. DNA testing cannot distinguish between identical twins as potential fathers, though future scientific advances may allow identification. A judge ruled the registered twin no longer has parental responsibility pending further hearings, but declined to declare he's not the father. Another judge previously found both brothers equally likely to be the child's father. Wow. They need someone like Maury Povich.
You are not.
And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, we've mentioned this guy before, and I have failed to mention him in subsequent stories because this man is just a delinquent. But I have to mention him here because this has become a chronic situation. 51-year-old James Farthing was arrested for burglary on March 28th, marking his 4th arrest since winning a $167.3 million Powerball jackpot with his mother and girlfriend in April of 2025. Police say the Kentucky man entered a Lexington home and stole $12,000 cash before fleeing in a black Porsche. Officers found him at a nearby casino and racetrack parking lot, adding marijuana possession charges upon arrest. Farthing posted $10,000 bond, which is now just pocket change for him. His legal troubles include Scott County charges for allegedly intimidating someone in a legal proceeding, plus Fayette County charges for wanton endangerment and leaving the scene of a November hit-and-run incident. Days after his jackpot announcement, Florida authorities arrested him for reportedly kicking a deputy in the face. Okay, so I mentioned him in his first arrest last year, but he's now had 4 arrests. Trust me, I won't be mentioning him again.
Powerball is huge. Jackpot starting at 40 million. Please play responsibly.
I'm guessing he hasn't done anything responsible in his life. Anyway, let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Karen Horwitz is an award-winning public school teacher and whistleblower. She's also the author of A Graver Danger, which draws directly from teacher whistleblowers to examine systemic failures. Karen joins us from Chicago via Riverside.com. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Peter. I'm glad to be with you today.
Glad to have you on the show. You describe what happens when educators raise concerns about their school districts. It almost sounds like it's a, for lack of a better term, cultish situation.
Yeah, you could say that. It's a very closed system. And that's why I've sort of made it my mission to open it up, because I feel strongly that our schools are the basis of our democracy, and you can see what happened to our democracy. So I wanted to expose this before anything negative happened. And of course, I haven't, but I'm still working at it.
When teachers get into the profession, they have a very optimistic outlook. It kind of reminds me of Karen Valentine in the old television show Room 222. At what point did you realize that within the education system, as you thought it to be, it wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be, and it was actually somewhat of a danger?
Well, I went back. I taught right out of college, and then I did a bunch of other things. I went back to teaching in my 40s. The point that where I realized this, because I was really thrilled to have this job. I felt like I won the lottery getting back into teaching because I loved it so much. The point where I saw problems with the principal who actually was not the principal that the teacher committee really wanted hired. She was very young and she didn't like the older teachers and she was trying to get rid of them. And so the first year I was there, she got rid of 2 of the older teachers and she was going after the rest of us because she wanted younger people. And there is a law in our country, that an age discrimination law. So what she was doing was actually illegal. So I went and talked to the superintendent and he threatened me that if I made an issue about it, he would make my life miserable. It went on from there and he kept his word.
So, when did you realize that you had a problem with the school administration? And also, when did you decide enough is enough? I'm writing this book, A Graver Danger.
Well, I realized the problem when she fired the first 2 people. Then 3 of us that were still there, concerned about what was going on, went to an attorney to see what we could do about this. This went on, I don't remember the exact year, but I was fired in 1999. So that was probably around 98 or 7. After I was fired was when started thinking, okay, I'm going to do something different now. I can't teach kids, they're not going to let me, but I'm going to teach the public what's going on. So I started an organization called National Association for Prevention of Teacher Abuse, and trying to find other people all over the country who had experiences like I did. That was in 2000. In 2002, I started the website, started the organization. Over the years, I have over 2,000 members of this organization. I wrote my first book in 2008, actually. A Graver Danger is actually like my third book. I've used books to try to get this public because it's really hard. People just have no clue what's going on in our schools because the other teachers all kept quiet because they wanted to keep their job. And I didn't because I felt like it was worth getting fired to get this known because I really honestly felt like back in it actually started in 95 when I noticed it, that I actually felt like it was going to ruin our democracy. And I was really worried about it. And I thought, as much as I love teaching, well, I'm still teaching. I'm just not teaching kids.
Go back to the principal who was trying to get rid of, as you say, older teachers. When you went to the administration about the school and they kind of threatened you, did you get a correlation with, well, maybe this principal is just a puppet doing what the administration wants her to do?
You know, I didn't think so because I believe so much in education, and I just didn't believe that there was an administration that actually didn't care about good teachers and kids because the older teachers were the more experienced teachers. The thing is that a lot of people think, oh, well, they do that because the older teachers make more money. And in many districts, it is true that as they get up in through the scale, they make more money, so they might want to get rid of them because they can't afford it. But in this case, I was a new teacher. I had some experience, but I was like on the same level as all these young teachers as far as what I was being paid. So it wasn't about money. And I was able to see that very clearly. I didn't think it was the administration until I then, after the superintendent threatened me, then I went to the board because you see the board is separate, because that's not supposedly the administration. And I put together a presentation for them showing all these bad things that had been going on, is what she was doing. They responded to it with a letter saying, investigation is not what we do. And I was kind of astounded because if a school board doesn't investigate what's going on, then who does? And the other thing that I did was I called the Illinois State Board of Education. I wanted to know who you could report things to. And so I called them and they said, there's no watchdog. We're not the watchdog. We don't do anything about this. The only watchdogs are the voters. And so I realized, well, gosh, people don't even think about voting in these elections. They're not like on their mind as anything big. And most of the people that get on the school board are maybe somebody that the administrator or the superintendent kind of grooms and likes or whatever. It's like it's almost like a social thing more than anything else. And I thought they're the watchdogs. So when I got the letter back from them saying investigation is not what we do, and I thought, okay, then nobody is a watchdog because these are the school board members. And so that's when I thought I went sort of like full throttle. I got to do something about this. And honestly, the reason teachers don't do this, one, it's kind of scary because they're pretty mean they do some pretty bad stuff to the teachers. But the main thing is that they need their jobs. And I was in this fortunate position that I went back to teaching. I had remarried and I didn't have to work. My husband is an attorney and, it was my choice. I just love teaching. So after I saw this stuff, I thought I will serve our society better doing this than being in a classroom. And so and I can afford to do it. But I understood why the other teachers didn't do it because they will get fired. And it's a myth. People think that it's impossible to fire a teacher. It's absolutely 100% not true. What the truth is that it costs a lot of money to fire a teacher. So they only fire people like me. Like I have it documented from the newspaper. They spent over $1 million firing me, and they probably had insurance on top of that. Their incentive is to fire their political enemies, or as you said, cult, whatever enemies, and not like if there's some pervert in the classroom. Then they make excuses. And I have a bunch of that's on my website because the person who co-founded the organization with me, she got put on leave for, I think, sitting on the floor at a teacher's in meeting or some stupid reason. But the real reason was that she filed an assault claim against her principal. So they went after her, put her on unpaid leave. In the meantime, she was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. There was another teacher at her school, not at her school, in her district, who was teaching science, and he showed naked pictures of himself to his kids. So they got him out of the classroom, but they put him in a different school. And there was a newspaper article saying, well, there's nothing they could do about it because of the union rules, they had to keep him in the school. And they were totally lying because she was home for no reason, and this guy was still teaching. And that's the kind of stuff that people need to understand. It's really that bad. The kind of stuff they're doing is like over the top, lawless stuff like that and harmful to kids. And so that's why I made this my career.
You mentioned earlier that you organized this group, and when you reached out to other teachers, were you surprised with the amount of reaction you got?
Um, I don't know. I got, the thing is, a lot of them were afraid. And people would say to me, I was circling your website for 3 years, afraid because, they weren't sure that I wasn't like an administrator trying to trap them or something. That sort of surprised me, that the amount of fear they had. I used to get like 150 or so new members a year. Most of them were teachers. Occasionally I got parents that read the site and were real interested in this. But I wasn't really surprised, and I found a lot of people that thought exactly like I did, which was my goal. I wanted to verify what I was doing before I even wrote a book about it, because, what if it was just this fluke at the school district I was at? And of course, the stuff they did at my district was way less than what I found in other districts, negative. They were doing a lot of things that were really bad for kids. But no, I wasn't surprised because it was pretty consistent everywhere.
Your story goes back about 20 years. Is the situation in school districts worse now than it was back when you started this?
Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely worse. It's definitely worse because they haven't done anything about it. What I was able to do in the book, or in some of my books, I tracked different things that were going on, and yeah, definitely worse.
Do you see any kind of light at the end of the tunnel for this?
The light I see is I want to get some leaders in our country reading my book, that if we can get somebody who actually cares about our democracy and actually cares about, the people, because education is the main pillar of democracy. And when you take that pillar away, you've got a mess. So my book explains it. It has a chapter on specifically what we can do to change things. The corruption in the schools is, 90% of the problem. But the other thing is corruption breeds incompetence. There's a lot of incompetent stuff going on. Like the children were not really taught media literacy. And that's why so many people really don't, they believe all kinds of stuff that's all on the internet. And there's just so many things that got missed because the schools weren't doing their job for about more than 40 years now. Because this sort of started in the 80s. It started around the 80s in our country, and it was just the beginnings of the corrupt angle. But prior to the corrupt angle, they were still making mistakes. I mean, our last leader of education was Horace Mann, and he died in 1859. So there hasn't been a lot of great leadership in the field of education. So it wasn't like they were perfect before the corruption set in, but then the corruption made it impossible for them to ever change or fix things. But yes, I absolutely see a light, because the solution I have is almost fairly simple. I call it like a computer restart. When people start to realize what's going on, they can solve the problem. But as long as it's a secret, they're never going to solve the problem. So that's the whole point of my book. It can't be a secret anymore. It's a problem we have to solve.
The book is called A Graver Danger. Karen, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it greatly.
Karen Horwitz, an award-winning public school teacher and whistleblower and the author of A Graver Danger, White Chalk Crime. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0868, and you'll find the link to Karen's various sites, her Substack columns, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order her book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
Not enough people are talking about the benefits of dried grapes. It's all about raising awareness.
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like, but the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestufffileprogram. program.
I'm standing like a giant BC cedar. For Canada. Hi, this is David Suzuki. I'm a proud third-generation Canadian of Japanese ancestry. Canada is far from perfect, but it aspires to moral values I'm proud of. Buy Canadian. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada for Canada.
Available on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and just about every other way you stream audio. This is the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. It's radio that's everywhere you want to be, and some places you don't.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk to the author of the book Unburdening, plus Kathleen Troy, the dog trainer extraordinaire, is back on the program to talk about your pet. We also have Sir Dudley's Poetry Corner, a morning shower thought, an idiot of the day coming your way, and much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. In Florida, Palm Bay resident Manny Rosado went viral on TikTok after climbing onto his car during a hailstorm to protect it from damage. The video shows Rosado sprawled across his vehicle, legs flailing, while securing a tarp over the sunroof as hail pounds his body. Said Rosado, "Before y'all ask why I ain't let it happen, the hail can be bad and grow big, so I ain't trying to see my insurance hurt." Wow, that's some interesting sentence structure there, pal. Yeah. Anyway, he referenced knowing people who faced $3,000 to $5,000 in hail damage bills 2 years ago. He went on to say about his painful experience, "I was trying to tie around the bars on top, but I just kept getting hit." While not recommended, many viewers understood his logic, given expensive hail damage repairs and insurance deductibles. Yeah, I've seen the video too, but on rare occasions, hailstones have been known to kill or at least cause a concussion. So what would you rather spend your money on? Car insurance or healthcare claims? Yeah. Dean Roy, a freshman at Stowe High School, has become the first minor to qualify for Vermont's gubernatorial ballot after forming the Freedom and Unity Party.
Hello, I'm Dean Roy, a 14-year-old who's running for governor of Vermont under the Freedom and Unity Party, which I founded myself.
The 14-year-old secured his spot for the November 3rd general election by meeting state residency requirements of 4 years, as Vermont law establishes no minimum age for governor candidates. Roy, who previously worked as a legislative page at the State House, criticized current leadership effectiveness. He said, "I know it sounds crazy, a 14-year-old running for governor, but honestly, look at the people in charge right now. They've been doing this forever, and things still aren't working." The independent candidate identifies housing as Vermont's most pressing issue. Roy's campaign describes him as a Nordic skier, runner, maple syrup producer, and Formula One enthusiast who doesn't align with major political parties. You know, at 14, he can't vote, can't drive, can't drink. But he does make some sense. I wouldn't be surprised if current politicians are quaking in their boots trying to change the laws for minors to run for office, but time will tell, like in 4 years, when he's actually 18 years old and unleashed. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. Okay, this is a story that's near and dear to my heart, because every day at 4 p.m., I go to my fridge and pull out a Kit Kat bar.
Have a break. Have a Kit Kat.
Yes, it's the break that I need, and I like them when they're cold. But this next story puts a chill in my heart. Thieves stole 12 tons of Kit Kat chocolate bars from a truck traveling between Italy and Poland. The stolen shipment contained 413,793 units of the Nestle's new chocolate range and disappeared during transit on March 28th. The truck left a central Italy factory bound for Poland when criminals intercepted it. Said a Nestle spokesperson, "We've always encouraged people to have a break with Kit Kat, but it seems thieves have taken this message too literally and made a break with more than 12 tons of our chocolate."
Have a break. Have a Kit Kat.
The theft may cause Kit Kat shortages during Easter, as stolen bars could enter unofficial European sales channels. Nestle said investigations continue with local authorities and supply chain partners. The company warned stolen chocolates can be traced through unique batch codes on each bar, with scanners receiving instructions to alert Kit Kat if matches are found. Well, personally for me, I hope these heinous criminals are brought to justice swiftly and punished to the max.
Give me a break, woo! Give me a break, break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar.
Oh, how can you sing at a traumatic time like this? Oh, and now, this.
The Stuff File presents Sir Dudley Piddly Havisham Sedgwick Smythe's Poetry Corner.
There once was a lady named Ferris, whom nothing could ever embarrass, till the bath salts one day, in the tub where she lay, turned out to be plaster of Paris.
And let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program. Almost 20 years ago on my old radio show, we talked to journalist Gary May about his first book, which was called Hard Oiler. Since then, after a dozen books of nonfiction, he's retired from the newspaper biz, and he has just written his first novel. It's called Unburdening, and it's a 5-generation saga. Gary joins us from Windsor, Ontario via riverside.com. Hi, Gary.
Hello, Peter. How are you doing?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for taking the time to be on the program with us. As I mentioned, it's almost 20 years. It was, I'm very anal retentive, so I keep anal retentive records. It was Thursday, April 17th, 2008, that I spoke to you.
My gosh.
So what have you been doing since then?
Well, I have written a number of other books. I set up my own company and wrote commission books for a few years for corporations and for families and that sort of thing. And then more recently, I decided that life's too short and I want to get into writing the kinds of books that I want to do, things that are of interest to me. And I have to say that yes, Hard Oiler was my first book, and I really got bitten by the oil bug back in those days. And I've written a number of books that pertain to the early oil industry in southwestern Ontario. The last one, which was my favorite, actually, it was called Crude Genius, and it was about William Henry McGarvey, who was Canada's first internationally successful oil baron.
So as I mentioned, you're retired from journalism. You've gone from nonfiction books to a fiction book. As someone who was trained as a journalist, is it difficult to do a fictionalized story when you've spent your entire career basically dealing with facts?
Well, it's not difficult, or wasn't difficult for me, and I guess partly because really deep down I've always been a history nerd. I've just always have been. It dawned on me at a very early age that wherever we are, we're surrounded by really interesting history. And I always loved to, wherever I lived, dig into the history of that place and find out where people came from and why they do what they do. And that's what got me interested initially in the oil business when I was sent by the London Free Press to Sarnia to report from that city and learned that Sarnia was not very far from where oil was first discovered in southwestern Ontario. And that's what got me interested in the pursuit of several oil books. So no, it was really a smooth transition, really. As a journalist, I was always kind of frustrated that I was never able to tell my story or the stories that evolved in my head. I wanted to tell people what I thought about things and my observations rather than simply writing down and being meticulous about being accurate about what other people were telling me. I think in Crude Genius, it kind of dawned on me that there was a way to transition from one to the other. I started reading people like Truman Capote and Hunter S. Thompson and discovered the styles that they applied, the narrative style they applied to fiction, to real characters. They became deeper literary characters, and I tried that in Crude Genius. And so it seems to me that when I came up with this idea for a story about an Irish immigrant family, that it was ready. I was ready. I was just ready to jump into fiction.
Well, tell us what the story of Unburdening is all about. As I mentioned, it's a 5-generation saga, so you still seem to be steeped in history, which is one of your favorite topics. Tell us what the story is about.
It's a story about an Irish family who are forced by circumstances to leave Ireland in the 1840s. And just a little bit of a spoiler alert here, it's not because of the potato famine. It was because of something else. But you're going to have to read the book to find out what. And so they left Ireland and they came to Canada and settled in eastern Ontario in the Bay of Quinte region. That's a real region. I made up a lot of the names of communities in the book, but the Quinte region is an actual apple growing region in eastern Ontario. And the story evolves over 5 generations of the O'Malley family until it comes up to the modern day. The end of my story is kind of between 1975 and 1980. In 1975, there's a tragic death. The son of the woman who dies investigates and finds out some very startling things about his family and his background that he had absolutely no idea previously were fact.
Your protagonist in the late 70s or middle 70s is a fellow by the name of James O'Malley, and he's a journalist turned college professor. And I'm just wondering if that's a little bit of you in there.
It kind of is, I suppose. This is strictly a book of fiction. There are no real characters from my family or anyone else's family in this book. But James grows up on his family's apple farm, and he's changed by circumstances of the Second World War. He goes away to war against his father's better judgment, who feels that he should stay home and continue to farm and be productive to Canada and its troops in that fashion. But James says, "No, I have to go to war. It's my duty to do so." He comes back a totally changed person, and he surprises himself that he no longer wants to farm the family plot. The farm, the land, the heritage are still important to him, but James wants to do something else, and he becomes a journalist. And in doing so, he rubs elbows with some significant characters of the day, such as Lester B. Pearson, who is the foreign affairs minister after the war and then became prime minister. He becomes involved in the period of Quebec's history involving the FLQ crisis. He gets to know some of the characters involved in the FLQ crisis. So I love history. I love bringing in history to my story. But James then he has a disillusionment himself. He a falling out between him and journalism, and he decides that he's going to go back to school and teach his version of journalism to students. And so he goes to he becomes a university or at least a college professor and teaches journalism.
This kind of parallels, I mean, without the war part, it kind of parallels your journey into journalism, does it not?
It parallels my journey, yes. I guess you could say that. Certainly, I was too young for the Second World War. My father was a World War II veteran, so I certainly heard his stories, what he was willing and able to talk about. I was of the generation that I was heavily influenced and affected by the Second World War and the fallout from that. So yes, there are parallels for sure.
So now that you've written your first fiction novel, has it unleashed something in you that you want to do more?
Well, it has, and actually, right now I'm involved in a book. I'm working with Biblioasis Press on it is a non-fiction book. It's about Windsor, Ontario's labor history. But once that is over, and once that's published, I am definitely going to delve back into fiction again. And I've developed an idea. I have plotted out to the scenario. I have established some of the characters. This is going to be something that I'm hoping is going to make a bit of a difference. I'm picking up on the concept of itinerant farm workers, which I touch on in this book. That's a very significant issue down here in southwestern Ontario, is overseas farm workers who come in to work the various crops and fields in southwestern Ontario. And it came to the public's attention during the COVID crisis, the concerns that people legitimately have about the conditions that those people worked in. So that's really kind of the background to what my next novel is going to be about.
It sounds like you have purposely melded and successfully melded the idea of your love for history and your training as a journalist together.
Exactly. That's exactly what I've been trying to do. As I said earlier, I'm a history nerd, always will be, but I'm also a journalist at heart, and I believe that both are very important subjects to our generations.
Well, congratulations on the book, Unburdening, and we look forward to future novels coming your way. And don't wait almost 20 years to give us a holler.
I won't wait, Peter. I thought maybe you were going to ask me about the title because so many people have asked me about the title. They think it's unusual. Unburdening really refers to the quiet burdens that pass from one generation to another. People may not always know that that's what they're doing, but there are certain burdens that are being passed on to us by our previous generations. And the book is really about how some of the people in it, such as James and his mother Grace, deal with unburdening themselves from those bonds or those things that control them from previous generations.
What have you been burdened with?
Oh, not very much. I'm a very unburdened person. I'm perfectly happy with my life, and I can't say that I can point to any burdens at all, Peter. I'm delighted with my life and want to live every day to the fullest.
Again, the book is Unburdening. It's written by Gary May. And Gary, thanks once again for being on the program with us.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Gary May, author of the novel Unburdening. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0868, and you'll find the link to Gary's site. That's also where you'll find information on how you can get his book, which will only be released in May. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
It's interesting how tobacco companies kill their best customers and condom companies kill their future customers.
Morning Shower Thoughts from the Stuff File program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestufffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestufffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
The Serial Killer's Son Takes a Wife by Michael Liebling is not like any serial killer novel you've ever read before.
Go ahead. I dare you to figure it out before the chilling end.
Find out what it's like to be the offspring of a multiple murderer.
Locked in a room or locked in your mind, it's really all the same.
The Serial Killer's Son Takes a Wife by Michael Liebling. Available everywhere you buy books.
Here's a penny for your thoughts from the Stuff File program, coming to you from Montreal, Canada, a country that doesn't have pennies.
And still to come on the program, we do indeed have an Idiot of the Day coming your way at the end of the show. We're not going to be able to do any Stuff File news here in this segment because we've just about run out of time. So I just want to get to our last guest because it's one of my favorites. Okay, so let's do it right now. Kathleen Troy is back on the show. She is a dog trainer and the author of Dear Dylan's Dog Squad, as well as a series of YA detective mysteries. She joins us from California via Riverside.com. Hi, Kathleen.
Good morning. Hello.
Hi. Nice to have you back on the program again. Now, this is something we've talked about in the past, but you want to expound upon it a little more, and that is sending your dog away to boot camp and why that's not necessarily a good idea.
You know, Peter, everyone wants to do the right thing by their dog, and so they do get advice. And so I do really suggest that you shop around and get different advices from different people. You know, it all comes down to training, that's true, but what kind of training is going to be good for you and good for your dog? Yes, you want a dog that's going to be trained, you want a dog that's going to be obedient, you want a dog that's going to be safe, but you want a dog that's going to bond with you. And that's really at the heart of everything and the success of training. So people hear, well, gosh, I'll send my dog to boot camp for 30 days and they'll be with a great trainer and they'll learn all kinds of things and they'll come home this miracle dog and be perfect. Well, the thing is, the dog does learn all those wonderful things with another person, and they bond with another person. So when they come home to you, they have no idea who you are. And they don't recognize your voice. They don't recognize why you're giving them commands and things like that. So you've lost that ability to bond with them. The better thing really is to maybe join a beginner's class, maybe with 4 or 5 other dog owners and their dogs. So your dog gets some socialization in there as well. And then maybe do a one-on-one. But you want to bond with your dog. The whole thing is to have your dog pay attention to you because you're going to be the alpha dog and you're going to be the one that your dog looks to for guidance, for trust, and what to do next.
And one of the things that you mentioned is you're not necessarily bonding with that dog because you've sent it away and it's bonding with someone else. Now, what is the difference between what we now call boot camp for puppies and was called obedience school? Are those the same thing or different?
Usually, obedience school is something that maybe you would take your dog to every day or once a week for a period of time and so forth. But boot camp, they're away from you. You know, the thing is, too, Peter, is this let's say that you just got your dog today from a shelter. And so the dog's happy, he's in a home, this is great. And suddenly he's shipped off to boot camp for 30 days. He doesn't know that he's going for training. All he knows is once again, he's on his own. So, they're feeling a lot of things, isolation, worry, anxiety. Am I going to be living here now? Will I see those people who picked me up in the car? Things like that. So all that's going to be going on in your dog's head. And when they're at boot camp, I'm sorry to say, but a lot of trainers do use fear as a motivation for training. And that's something I'm just absolutely against. I'm for love and consistency and being a good dog owner. That's what I'm for.
So you're not into boot camp, but you're into training. And I need to ask, when is the right time or how early should you start any kind of training?
Well, their attention span is going to be different with different breeds, but you can start just a little bit at a time. Just asking them to be quiet, asking them to sit, and things like that. And remember, their attention span is going to be pretty quick, the younger that they are, and the type of breed that they are, too. The more energetic the dog, the attention span is going to be much less. Just keep in mind that some things are going to take longer than others, given the age of the dog, the breed of the dog, but just work with that consistency is so they get a little bit older, so they start to look to you for guidance. And again, recognize you as the alpha dog. You're going to get more success. And so you can increase the length of time that you have training your dog. I always suggest that if you're working with a command, for example, like sit, that you do it maybe 2 or 3 times and then let a couple hours go by and then try it again. And, let some more time go by and try it again. But don't have long training sessions. Nobody likes that. I mean, think about, people nowadays, they sit in Zoom meetings for hours. Nobody likes that. That's poor. That's boring.
When it comes to dogs, the old saying, you can't teach a dog, an old dog new tricks. And the reason why I bring that up is when you go to a shelter, you might get a puppy, but you might also get an older dog.
Mhm.
How important is it for that age range to be in training, and how easy is it to train an older dog?
All dogs need training. They really do, Peter. And I think it's something that is always ongoing, whether you get your dog as a puppy, and then if you're lucky to have that dog for many, many years, or if you get your dog as an older dog, and again, you're lucky to have that dog for the rest of his or her life. I think a dog is always in training every day. They're always looking to you. I think with an older dog, just realize that it may take them a little bit longer, but at the core of it, all dogs want a job and they just want to please you. So if you can put some fun into the training, if you can show them that you're enthusiastic and that you are creating this bond with your dog, it's going to be fun. They're going to want to do it. And don't forget, Peter, the secret to any dog training is yummy treats.
Well, actually, that's an interesting point because I've seen a lot of dog videos and I've seen people actually give treats to their dog. How much is too many treats?
Okay, great question. Dogs have a tendency to be overweight, just like people do, and some breeds more than others, such as pugs are great little eaters. And so, even if you have a big dog, let's say a Great Dane, you don't want to give them a big treat. It shouldn't be no bigger than the fingernail on your pinky because you want the dog to gulp the treat down. If it's something that they're chewing, they're not going to be thinking about you at all. They're going to be thinking, oh, this is really yummy. I hope I get another one. But you want to limit their treats to 10% of their allowed caloric intake in a day. And for that, you'd want to ask your vet, how much is that? Again, keep it really, really small. A lot of people put treats in their pocket, or some people wear a fanny pack. I suggest the latter because your hands are always free. So if you're also teaching your dog sign language, you can give the sign as you say the command, and then you can give them the treat.
And this is a delicate situation. It's the other end of the dog. I've never been a dog owner, but I know that it's important to poop and scoop, as the saying goes.
Mhm.
But I've never had a definitive answer, and I get different people giving different answers of when you poop and scoop, where do you put that remains? Because I've seen people, just dump it in somebody else's garbage can or whatever the case may be. And I've known people who are upset at being the reciprocal of other dogs' remains.
Yes.
So, what is the proper way of disposing of that?
Okay, I think different locations have different rules on that. Here in California, we're very strict about what is discarded and how it's discarded. So we're very fortunate in what I would say public areas, such as places where people walk, just naturally walk for exercise or fun, or parks or things like that. We actually have receptacles for that. That makes it very, very easy. Otherwise, when you get home, then you should use a receptacle that is appropriate for the location that you live in. So, for example, where I live, you have receptacles for trash, receptacle for lawn, receptacle for recycling. And so it would go more in the lawn area. Yeah.
And one final question. I mean, you had the book, Dear Dylan's Dog Squad, so it may be an answer to what I'm already asking here. And that is, uh, what is your idea for dog names? Do you like traditional pet names or do you like human names?
Well, I guess I prefer, and I think it is a preference of the person, human names. I look at their faces and, I usually instantly get a name. But whatever you choose, you want to have a name that's one syllable or two syllables, because dogs respond easier to those. I've seen people, they've got a little white fluffy dog named Princess, and Princess is very happy to be named Princess. And then I see other people and they've got maybe an Australian Shepherd and its name is Cowboy, and Cowboy's happy to be called Cowboy. And I can think of someone who has a Jack Russell and that dog's name is Henry, and Henry's happy to be Henry. So I think it's going to be up to the individual. It's your dog. And again, you want that bond, and try out a couple of names. See what your dog responds to. If they come to you immediately, great. If they give you a look like, oh no, well, try another name.
Again, I've never been a dog owner, but if I had a dog, it would be a human name, and it would be, and I hate to generalize, but it would be what I would consider some of the dullest names in the world,
Like what?
right?
Like what?
So I would name a dog. I would name a dog Lloyd.
I like that. I like that. I have a visual already of what a dog would look like.
Or I would name it Fred. But like the Stuff File program, I would have a chain around its neck with its name emblazoned on it, and it would be Fred with a PH.
Well, it's a unique dog, and he should have a unique name. I always wanted to have a mutt dog and name it Alias. I thought that would be kind of great.
I love that. Kathleen, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program. Love to have you back again. There's so many things we can talk about, and we'll do that in the future. Thank you once again for being on the show.
Thank you.
Kathleen Troy, author of Dear Dylan's Dog Squad. She's also the author of the YA detective mysteries entitled Never Believe a Lie Twice and Never Believe a Con Artist Twice. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0868, and you'll find the link to Kathleen's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order her books directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. The Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
35-year-old Deshalyn Jelks is charged with robbing a credit union in Anchorage, Alaska. Police say Jelks handed a teller a note reading, "I have a weapon, and that weapon I am armed with is the power and authority of Jesus Christ. Empty the drawer into an envelope and do not set off the alarm. Thank you." The teller emptied the drawer and handed it over along with a tracker. Responding officers found Jelks across the street at a Costco. In a confrontation, Jelks dropped a large amount of money, $1,701 to be precise, in cash, onto the floor. Officers also noticed Jelks was wearing an ankle monitor after being released on a previous charge, which seems to be related to possessing and/or using meth. For the record, he wasn't high at the time of this crime, otherwise he would be disqualified from this segment. Anyway, Jelks admitted being armed with the authority of Jesus Christ, but denied taking any money. As officers took him to jail, Jelks asked if he would get any of the money back that he had dropped. Okay, so never mind the stick-up note claiming he was armed by the power and authority of Jesus Christ. Let's just focus on what's obvious. Why? Oh, why? Would you try to rob a bank while wearing an ankle monitor? And, side note, why would you think to ask for the money back? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0868. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com, and once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0868. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. And you can find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including kdxradio.com and over the air on stations like
World FM New Zealand,
WNRHLP-FM Newport Richey, Florida,
KZZHLP-FM Eureka, California,
WFNULP St. Paul, Minnesota,
CKUW-FM Winnipeg,
CFMU Hamilton,
CKLU Sudbury,
Local 107.3 FM St. John,
CHSR Fredericton.
Plus, streaming on any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
Sir Dudley here. You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. And remember, as far as this program is concerned, productivity may appear to be high, but is largely decorative.